Welcome to our teaching series on spiritual practices. Today, we're going to be exploring centering prayer, what it is, where it comes from, and how to do it. We may often think of prayer in terms of talking to God, sharing our thoughts and feelings, saying thanks, asking for help, which is good and beautiful. There are, though, many other forms of Christian prayer. Those different forms of prayer, they complement and enrich one another. Centering prayer is a method of prayer in which we practiced resting quietly in the company of God, centering our attention upon God's presence, intentionally opening our heart and our mind, our center, if you will, to God's Spirit. The name centering prayer came into regular usage about half a century ago when a group of Trappist monks, Thomas Keating, Basil Pennington, and William Menninger, to be specific, began working to make some of the ancient Christian spiritual traditions more accessible to the broader public. As they did so, they drew upon some of the teachings of a man by the name of Thomas Merton. That is a name you may know. Merton, too, was a Christian monk as well as a prolific writer, and I would say one of the most important and influential spiritual teachers of the last 100 years. Merton wrote extensively on contemplative prayer, which is the family of Christian prayer from which centering prayer comes. Merton described this kind of prayer at times as a return to the heart or an awakening within, the profound depths of our being, or a place for finding one's deepest center, where we find nothing less than God's own presence. Over time, as they shared Merton's language, the form of prayer taught by these monks became known simply as centering prayer. This way of praying, it traces its roots back through Christian contemplative history and spirituality, through the monastic traditions of prayer, through the writings of mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, Hildegard von Bingen, Julian of Norwich, works like The Cloud of Unknowing and the sayings of the Desert Fathers, early Christians who went into the desert to pray, following the instruction and the example of Jesus, who often went to a place apart to pray. Centering prayer, then, traces its roots to Christ. Centering prayer is an ancient thing. It's a simple practice meant to be accessible and repeatable. It can be done alone or in groups together. You can do centering prayer for 20 minutes or 10 or 5 or 2. Just set a simple timer so you don't have to think about the time once you begin. You can do centering prayer at a particular time each day, morning, midday, evening, just before going to bed. These are all very traditional times for Christian prayer. Or you can do it as the need arises. You can do centering prayer on the spot. When things are getting stressed or strained and you're completely uncentered, just find a little space. It could be a stool in the kitchen, or your seat on the airplane, or standing in the produce section, and take a little moment and close your eyes and breathe and say your sacred word. We're going to come to that in a minute. And then return to your center and to God who is with you. Done with any regularity, it can change our hearts and minds. It can steady them, strengthen them, open them. Centering prayer invariably leads to caring service to others. Mother Teresa of Calcutta often asked that centering prayer be taught to those who worked with her so they could be inspired and encouraged in their work. So that covers where centering prayer comes from and why it may be worth your while to give it a try in your spiritual life with God. So how do you do it? It takes just a handful of easy steps. Step 1, find a quiet place to sit. A chair, a cushion on the ground, whatever is close at hand. Have a seat, settle in, close your eyes, quiet your body, notice your breath, and make it your intention to give God your attention. Step 2, choose a sacred word that you will use like a touchstone, a sign of your intention to be open to God's presence around you and within you. There are all sorts of words that you can choose for your sacred word. You can choose a single word or a simple pair of words. There isn't a right or a wrong in this. Sometimes people choose words like God, Jesus, Christ, Lord, Adonai, Spirit, Father, Abba, Mother. Sometimes they choose words like love, peace, grace, hope. Once you've chosen the word, simply sit comfortably with eyes closed and silently begin to repeat the sacred word, which points you gently towards God's presence. When you're ready, you can let go of the sacred word then and simply rest in God. Step 3. When thoughts and feelings arise, which they always do, about all sorts of things, right? The past, the future, little thoughts like what you're going to have for lunch, the possibility maybe that you forgot to move the laundry from the washer to the dryer and now it's getting all stinky in your basement, the fact that your left knee is achy or your right elbow is itchy, or big thoughts like deep longing or sharp regret or anxious worry. When the thoughts and the feelings come up, even carry you away for a bit, no worries. Just notice them and let them go to God as you sit and notice again your breath and return to your sacred word, which at that point you can speak out loud or quietly in your mind, and then settle back into your center and return to God's presence. Step 4. At the end of the prayer period, remain in silence with your eyes closed for just a moment, or maybe a couple moments, and invite God's Spirit into the middle of whatever is happening next in your life. That way you carry the centeredness from the moment of prayer into the world that you live in. Then you rise, you walk, you love, you live. That is centering prayer. If you'd like to, I invite you to join me right now for a brief session of centering prayer together before you go, just a couple minutes. We can let the music that you will hear be our timer. When the music ends, so will our prayer session. So 1, settle into the place where you're sitting. Get quiet, close your eyes, notice your breath. 2, choose a sacred word for today. Maybe something as simple as Jesus or Spirit or peace. And now, as we begin, say the word within you as a sign of your intention to open your heart and your mind to God's presence. As thoughts arise, gently let them go to God and return to your word and to God. And now, let us begin. And now, as this time comes to an end, we invite God to go with us into our lives and whatever comes next. And there you have it, centering prayer, ancient, powerful, spiritual practice for living our lives in God's presence in these days. Blessings to all of you in prayer and in life.